Q. Skills for Success. Reading and Writing. Level 4. Published and copyrighted by Oxford University Press, 2011. CD1. Unit 1. Power and Responsibility. The Q Classroom. Page 3.
Today we are beginning Unit 1. Every unit in Q starts with a question. As we go through the unit, we will continue to discuss this question. Our answers may change as we explore the topic. The question for Unit 1 is, what makes someone a hero? What do you think, Marcus?
A hero is someone who is brave and who sacrifices himself to help others.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. I think firefighters are heroes because they go into burning buildings to save people. Soldiers are heroes because they risk their lives to defend their country.
Sometimes regular people do heroic things too, like that man who helped all those people during the last bad storm.
That's true. The average person's heroism often comes out during a disaster, doesn't it? So there are heroes who risk their lives for others. Are there other kinds of heroes? Felix?
Sure. My greatest heroes are people who stand up for others. For example, people who fight against injustice. Even if they're not actually risking their lives, they are making sacrifices. They give up their time, their money, their personal happiness to help others. That's very heroic in my book.
What do you think, Sophie? What makes someone a hero?
I agree with the idea that it's self-sacrifice, but I think it's more than that. For me, heroism also means doing something that others are afraid to do. For example, the greatest hero in my life is the surgeon who saved my father's life. Most of us would be too afraid to operate on someone, to be responsible for whether they live or die. But a surgeon just does that on a routine basis. For me, that's a hero.
Unit 1. Reading 1. Page 7.
We all need a hero. Many writers, artists, and other people who create the stories of superheroes believe that these characters embody our deepest hopes and fears. They feel that superheroes represent our highest ambitions and help us deal with our worst nightmares. Superheroes face questions we will all have to face in the future, and they shed new light on our present condition. In addition, they do all this in a way that gives us a new sense of direction and resolve in our own lives. Defining a superhero. Let's start with a simple question. What is a superhero? What sets a superhero apart from a normal person? Well, first of all, they tend to look a bit different. Some wear capes. Some of them have cool gadgets. They wear a lot of tight clothes. As a rule, superheroes have powers and abilities far beyond ordinary human abilities. But most importantly, every one of them pursues justice, helps people who cannot help themselves, and fights evil with the force of good. Superheroes are extraordinarily powerful people who have both strengths and weaknesses. They typically have superpowers, the ability to fly or to leap over tall buildings, or at least normal human abilities that they have developed to a superhuman level. But while the super parts are certainly impressive, we can never forget the hero element as well. There are limits to how writers and artists may portray them. A superhero must possess a noble character that guides him or her into worthy achievements. Superheroes may have dark thoughts, just like any human being, but that darkness must be constrained by their desire to do the right thing, or the story is not superheroic. So not every costumed crime fighter is necessarily a hero, and not every character that has superpowers is necessarily a superhero. Hope and the superhero. The image of the superhero is both inspirational and aspirational. When they're portrayed well in stories and movies, superheroes present us with something that we can all aspire to. Plato, the Greek philosopher, believed that good is inherently attractive. What is good will pull us in its direction as long as we're not blocked from seeing it and appreciating it. That's why the superheroes in our favorite stories are depicted as moral forces, or forces for what is good and right. From childhood and on into adulthood, superheroes can remind us of the importance of self-discipline, self-sacrifice, and using our lives for something good and noble. They can do this while also entertaining us. Of course, most superhero stories are not written to teach us a lesson. Usually they're just for fun. But they have probably been around for so long and have continued to be so popular in part because they speak to our hopes. We all aspire to make a difference, to have a positive impact on the world, and to be acknowledged for that impact. Superheroes can keep that flame alive in our hearts when we read about their missions. But their stories also speak to our fears in equally important ways. Fear and the superhero. We all fear harm. That's just part of being human. In addition, we're often fascinated and worried about the unknown future. By portraying the many different kinds of harm that can enter our lives, superhero stories address those fears. Superheroes display the power of character and courage over adversity, and so they show us that we can also confront and overcome all these dangers and fears. When we confront adversity in our lives, we're often inclined to just give up and find an easier path. But superheroes show us that nothing worth doing is easy. They don't accept defeat, and they won't ever give up. They believe in themselves and their causes, and they go all out to achieve their goals. By showing us that even very powerful people have to fight and struggle, they help us deal with the fears that we all face. So, it'll be tough. So what? We can do it. The example of the superhero. Superheroes are obviously very gifted individuals. This is true of Superman and many others, but all of us are gifted in some way. All of us have unique talents and powers. If we can follow the superhero's example, we can find the courage to develop and use those gifts in our lives, despite any challenges. Superheroes are moral examples. Superman can inspire us. Batman can keep us going even when the going is very tough. Spider-Man can show us the importance of listening to our conscience rather than the voices around us. Daredevil can remind us that our limitations do not need to hold us back, and that we all have hidden strengths. The heroic path is sometimes lonely, but it's always right. If we keep an image of the superheroes in mind, their strength, courage, and resolve, we may find it easier to stay true to that path in the end. What would Superman do? Go do your version of it. The world always needs one more hero.
Unit 1, Reading 2, page 12.
Everyday People Changing the World. From Love Kitten to Child Literacy. Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. At 19, Johannes Gebre-Georges borrowed a novel entitled Love Kitten that changed his life forever. Born in rural Ethiopia, his father was an illiterate cattle merchant who insisted that his son have an education. So Gebre-Georges had seen a few books in school, but having a book of his own sparked a lifelong commitment. Today, Gebre-Georges is establishing libraries and literacy programs to connect Ethiopian children with books. Most Ethiopian children only have access to textbooks in the classroom, says Gebre-Georges. Books children read outside of school, those are the spices of education. Until he became a children's librarian, he didn't realize what the children of his native home were missing. Arriving in the United States in 1981, Gebre-Georges ultimately put himself through college, obtaining a graduate degree in library science. He took a position at the San Francisco Children's Library in 1985. There, he met The Little Engine That Could, Captain Ahab, and Peter Pan. He realized the impact children's books could make on a child's sense of wonder and vision. children could imagine everything from books, connections to other cultures, to other people, to other children, and to the universe at large. Reading gives them hope. It gives them pleasure. It gives them everything that they cannot otherwise get in regular textbooks. But Gebra Gjörgis found that there were no children's books in Amharic, the primary language of Ethiopia, and none representing the places and characters of Ethiopian lore. When the library allocated $1,200 for the purchase of Ethiopian books, Gebra Gjörgis was unable to find any, so he wrote one. Silly Mamo was the first bilingual Amharic English children's book, and its publication led Gebra Gjörgis to establish the nonprofit organization Ethiopia Reads in 1988. Using proceeds from book sales and grassroots bookathons, the nonprofit organization financed his efforts to bring children's libraries to Ethiopia. In 2002, Gebra Gjörgis returned to Ethiopia with 15,000 books donated by the San Francisco Children's Library. With them, he opened the Shola Children's Library in his Addis Ababa home. Young readers quickly overwhelmed the three-room home, requiring the addition of 2 large tents to provide shade for hundreds at a time. I just wanted to come back to Ethiopia and help children have a future, have hope, says Gebra Gjörgis. In addition to the original library, Ethiopia Reads established the Awassa Reading Center and Ethiopia's first donkey mobile library. Gebra Gjörgis customized a donkey-pulled trailer cart that now makes weekly visits to rural villages. Gebra Gjörgis reads storybooks to children who have no access to television or computers and believes that literacy and education will emancipate his impoverished land. With literate children, there is no limit to how much we can do. Cleaning her mountains, one bottle at a time. Tilcara, Argentina. Carmen Salva's mission may be ambitious, but her belief is simple. It's never too early to start caring for the land you live in and grow up in. It's a great joy to know that I am preparing a new generation to respect the environment. That's why on Saturdays, Salva and a group of 60 to 100 students, parents, and teachers can be found venturing into their mountains, trash bags in hand and llamas in tow. They're part of Esperanza de Vida, Hope for Life, Salva's youth environmental group that is trying to clean up the surroundings, one plastic bottle at a time. Salva was born and raised in the Jujuy province of northern Argentina, an area known for its rich culture and spectacular vistas. Despite its beauty, Salva says there's no real environmental consciousness in her community. We have a lot of issues to work on. The problem of water contamination. There's so much trash, Salva says. We can't just think it will take care of itself. Salva, a teacher in Jujuy for 20 years, says the environmental issues aren't recent. 10 years ago, she and her students noticed a lot of trash outside the school. The parks surrounding the school were littered with bottles. They began volunteering with a government program, collecting and bagging waste in the area. The program waned after a year, and students and teachers could no longer continue their environmental efforts. Our city had no formal recycling program, says Salva, so she began Esperanza de Vida in 1997 to organize and lead young participants in making our streets and our environment cleaner. At first, the group's activities were limited to cleaning parks near and around the school, but the organization's efforts have expanded well beyond the immediate area, and other Jujuy schools have joined in. About 150 people now take part, including about 80 children. Salva and fellow teachers have noticed their students apply as much energy and commitment to the weekend environmental activities as they do to their general subjects. Some even wait by my house on Saturday for the program to begin, beams Salva. The group convenes early in the morning to hike together into the mountains, where they work for hours, picking up trash and separating recyclables. On an average Saturday cleanup, it's not unusual for the group to collect roughly 60 bags of trash for recycling, clearing thousands of bottles. The llamas help carry the heavy load down from the mountains. The local government helps to transport the collected recyclables to the drop-off center, nearly 50 miles away. Salva says the group is raising awareness, adding new volunteers, and implementing new projects. The children are even teaching their parents to care for the environment around them. It's a great joy to know that I am preparing a new generation to respect the environment, says Salva. Their children's children will have another mentality, and our goal will be accomplished.
Unit 2. Appearances. The Q Classroom. Page 29.
In Unit 2, we're going to talk about appearances. The unit question is, what makes you want to buy something?
A good price.
Okay, well, that's very important, isn't it? But what about appearances? Why would you buy one thing over another if they're the same price?
Well, the way things look is important. For example, if it's something people are going to see in my home, like a television or a microwave, I want it to be good-looking as well as functional.
So, what is good-looking? You know, what makes you want to buy something?
I usually like things that look modern.
So, it may be the style that influences your decision, if you like things that look modern or old-fashioned or have a particular style. What else about the way something looks can influence you to buy it? Marcus?
Packaging can be important. Let's say I'm buying things like cleaning supplies, things that I really don't have any opinions about. I'll look at the design and the words on the can. If there's a picture on the can that makes me think the dirt is just going to disappear when I use this product, then I might buy it instead of another one.
So the way packages advertise the product inside can influence you to buy something. What about you, Felix? What makes you want to buy something? Are you influenced by packaging?
I think everybody is influenced by packaging, but not just the packaging of the product, also the way things look in the store. For example, you can take fruits and vegetables and throw them into bins, and they don't look that great. Or you can take the same fruits and vegetables and pile them up in nice arrangements with green stuff around them and spray some water on them so they look fresh and bright. And suddenly, they look delicious. Presentation is very important.
Unit 2. Reading 1. Page 32.
So much dead space. Creating store windows alive with promise. I am a nerdy American researcher. No one has ever thought of me as fashionable. What I do know about is shops and shopping. I've always been good at watching people. Because I grew up with a terrible stutter and was not comfortable talking, I learned to observe as a way of understanding social rules. I've turned this coping mechanism into a profession. What I've done for the past 25 years is research shopping behavior. I simply walk around malls and shopping streets and figure out what motivates people to buy things. What makes someone stop and look at a store window? What makes a woman go into a store? What makes a man buy something? As I stroll around, I look closely at store windows, since they are an essential part of the shopping experience. In his delightful book, Made in America, Bill Bryson writes about the history of stores and shopping in America. He describes the big store windows that were an important feature of most retail stores in the past century. When I look out my office window in New York City, I see many of those windows. They remain the same today as they were some 120 years ago. A century ago, people took the time to stop and look into store windows. I imagine them walking along slowly, stopping at a tall window and peering through the glass to see the latest fashions and newest products. Today, strolling, window-shopping pedestrians are an old-fashioned concept. Most people look straight ahead and walk with a quick, determined gait. Everyone seems to be in a hurry. They walk a lot faster now than they did in the old days. Throughout modern times, different factors have changed the way pedestrians walk in busy urban areas. One of the most significant of these factors is traffic lights. William H. White, the American author and urbanist, wrote about the pattern and movement of pedestrians on the sidewalk. He observed that because traffic lights are timed for the speed of cars, people pile up on street corners as they wait for the light to change. When the light changes, that pile of people will cross and stay crowded together as they continue down the street. Behind them there will be a gap of fewer people, but then another crowd will form when the traffic light changes again. This creates a pattern of crowds and gaps on urban shopping streets. Now think about how individuals behave when walking in these crowds of people. Some people will speed up to get out of the crowd, and then the entire group will begin to walk more quickly. This behavior affects how people view the store windows that they pass by. Even if you wanted to slow down or stop to look in a window, you couldn't. You have to keep walking quickly so that you won't be in the way of other people. That's why window displays need to instantly grab attention. But many don't. Take the drugstores in my neighborhood, for example. The windows are filled with boxes of bleach and detergent, packages of razors and soap, and whatever else can be squeezed into the space. With the windows so crowded, it is impossible to focus on any single product. Often it's difficult to even see clearly what is really being promoted. Maybe in 1928 it was important for a store to advertise the large selection of products offered. Maybe then shoppers had the time to really take a look at a window and examine the display. But these days, retailers are happy if pedestrians just glance at their store windows. The way our eyes and brain handle information has become more sophisticated. Thanks to television, film, and computers, our ability to process images is faster. We no longer read letter by letter, but rather in groups of words at a time. Movies have evolved so that we see the stories of years or even lifetimes in just a few hours. A billboard can tell a more sophisticated joke today than it could 20 years ago. A 15-second commercial can allude to a full story. Likewise, when it comes to window displays, shoppers today can understand information more quickly. Store windows today must be quick reads. They must be simple enough so that the products can be clearly identified, and they must be creative enough to catch the busy pedestrian's eye. Just a quick look at a store window should answer many questions for savvy shoppers. Who is the core market of the store? Does the store fit their personal style or not? How long will a typical trip into the store take? Especially since today's retail market is so competitive, if done right, windows can function as an important brand identity tool. As retailers, you must know who your customers are, and you must create windows that they will understand. For instance, Kiehl's, which sells all natural bath and body products, uses its windows as a place for highlighting social issues, which fits with the priorities of its customers. My favorite windows are in France. A man who runs his family's boutique off the main square in Strasbourg takes enormous pleasure in his windows. They tell jokes. Some are related to history. Sometimes his windows make me chuckle. The clothes are part of a larger story. His store always distinguishes itself from the other shops on the crowded square because his windows always make an impression. As busy as I might be as I walk down the street, his windows make me stop. Even more, they almost always tempt me to come inside the shop and take a good look around. So what can stores do with their dead space? How can windows come alive? To modern retailers, I propose the following. Let's liberate our design teams. Stop filling windows with products. Tell a story. Make us laugh. Make us think. Learn from advertisers like Calvin Klein or Benetton, who think outside the box with ads that catch our attention and motivate a response. Windows can be like literature. It's okay if not everybody understands the story you're telling. What is important is that the target customer gets it and stops to look.
Unit 2, Reading 2, page 40.
Now on stage, Your Home, by Douglas Nann. Tina Miller is busy at work in the kitchen of her New Jersey condominium, wrapping dishes in paper. Just outside, several large boxes stand near the front door, and in the living room, Miller's 2 sons are packing video games. "We've been here for almost 10 years, she says, looking around. "I never realized how much stuff we had." 2 months ago, Tina's husband Evan accepted a job in another state, and now the family is getting ready to move. "There's a lot of work to do, but the hardest part seems to be selling this condo," she explains. "We've had it on the market for over a month, and several people have come to see it, but so far, no offers." In theory, the Millers' home should have sold quickly. It's in a modern building on a quiet street. Shops and restaurants are within walking distance. The couple has even reduced the sale price by $10,000. Connie Tran, the real estate agent working with the Millers, believes she knows what the problem is. "This is a nice condo. The rooms are large and there's lots of light, but the feel of the place is all wrong. The living room is full of boxes. The kitchen and bathroom are cluttered. The paint on the walls is too dark. It doesn't make a great first impression on potential buyers." To help sell their condo, Tran has suggested that the Millers hire someone to stage it. What exactly does this mean? The main goal, professional stagers would say, is to prepare a house to sell by making it as attractive as possible. For most people, this simply involves fixing things that are broken or cleaning a place thoroughly. But even though these things are important, real estate agent Elizabeth Weintraub says that staging goes beyond decorating and cleaning. It's about creating a mood. Staging makes your house look bigger, brighter, cleaner, warmer, and best of all, it makes home buyers want to buy it. The Millers have agreed to have their home staged. So what will a professional home stager suggest doing to help sell their condo? 1. Minimize the clutter. The Miller family has lived in their home for 10 years, and though they're preparing to move, many of the rooms are still full of furniture, books, electronics, and other things that people collect over time. These things can make the place look crowded and smaller than it is. Packing and moving most of the unnecessary items out of the condo will make it look much larger, which will appeal to buyers. 2. Store personal items. The Millers also have to be aware of the small stuff, photos and magazines in the living room, a child's drawings on the refrigerator, and slippers in the bathroom. Not only do these things make the condo appear more cluttered, they also make it look like the Millers' home, and that's a problem. A buyer doesn't want to tour the place and see someone else's stuff. Professional home stager Barb Schwartz advises sellers to clear all unnecessary objects throughout the house. Doing this will help a potential buyer to mentally move in with their own things and to visualize themselves in the home. 3. Organize what's left. Once each room is down to a few essential items, a professional stager will make sure these things are positioned in an attractive way that makes the rooms look good. Sandra Rinamato, the host of a popular TV show about selling houses, offers these suggestions. Feature only a few pieces of furniture in each room, and pull pieces away from walls to make rooms look bigger. Bedrooms are difficult to stage because they're in daily use. To make these rooms appear spacious and neat, Rinamato recommends using white sheets on the bed and clearing everything off nightstands. Open the drapes or remove them completely. Light, bright rooms give the impression of a happy place, and everyone wants to move into a happy place. 4. Repaint if necessary. 4 years ago, the Millers painted the walls in the living room a warm reddish color. They love it, but a potential home buyer might not, for a couple of reasons. The color was a personal choice made by the Millers, which makes the condo still seem as if it's theirs. Dark colors can also make a room appear smaller. Repainting the walls a lighter, more neutral color will make the room look more spacious. What if the Millers don't sell the condo before they move? Should they still have it staged if it's empty? Sveta Melchuk of Home Staging Montreal and many other real estate professionals say yes. Melchuk notes on her website that most people have a hard time imagining a space as a potential home if it contains no furniture. The rooms will look too big or too small, and may invite buyers to notice the negatives, such as a scratch on the floor or old windows. For these reasons, many real estate agents will recommend furnishing some of the main rooms in a vacant home. In some cases, staging a home can cost as much as $4,000, which has many sellers wondering if it's worth it. Barb Schwartz, who has staged thousands of residences, believes it is. According to her, the average home can take up to 212 days to sell, while a professionally staged one usually takes just 37. Schwartz and others in her field also note that homes they prepare for viewing tend to sell for more money, often thousands of dollars more. Ultimately, staging seems to be a good investment, especially if an owner is having difficulty selling a home. The Millers agree. "I hardly recognize this place anymore," laughs Tina. "It looks wonderful, like something you'd see in a magazine. And last week, we had 2 offers to buy. The trouble is, I like it here so much now that I don't want to move."
Unit 3. Growing Up. The Q Classroom. Page 55.
The Unit 3 question is, what important lessons do we learn as children? Felix, what is one important lesson you learned as a child?
Oh, there are so many. It's hard to choose. One of the most important things I learned was that I have to work for what I want. My parents didn't believe in just giving me things. If I wanted money or I wanted to go somewhere with my friends, I had to work for it. I always had to contribute to the family, and it taught me to be a hard worker.
And you are a hard worker. Sophie, how about you? What important lessons do you think we learn as children?
Well, as children, we learn to care for others and to share. I had to share a room with my sisters, and of course we shared toys and clothes, too. That's a pretty valuable lesson for getting along in this world.
It certainly is. What do you think, Una? What important lessons do we learn as children?
We learn our values and our culture.
Okay, and how about you, Marcus? What important lessons do you think we learn as children?
I think most people learn to do the things their parents do. We learn right and wrong from our parents. I think many kids adopt the same habits as their parents have, whether they mean to or not.
I don't really agree with that. I'm really different from my parents in lots of ways.
3. Reading 1. Page 59.
The Good Teen. Eliza Parks is a high school senior. She plays 2 sports, is president of the senior class, and sings in the choir. As a junior, she received her school's top prizes in English and history and was selected to represent the school at a statewide speech contest. Not surprisingly, Eliza has been accepted at Yale University next year, where she has been awarded a scholarship. Even with all her extracurricular activities and academic commitments, Eliza makes time to be with her brother and her parents. Whenever possible, they eat dinner as a family and often take trips together on weekends. Eliza also has a strong network of friends who her parents know well. "I talk with my parents very freely about my friends, my life, whatever," she says. What is the secret to Eliza's happy adolescence? We often think of adolescence as a difficult period. The stereotypical teenager makes poor decisions, hangs out with the wrong friends, or takes dangerous risks. Many parents often dread these years because they think their children will stop talking to them and refuse to follow their rules. However, recent research suggests that this common assumption about adolescence is often not true. Many teens not only survive these years, they thrive. Instead of rebelling, many adopt the values of their parents. Instead of getting into trouble, they learn to work hard. Instead of forming negative relationships, they look for good role models and find supportive friends. In particular, teens equipped with specific skills and qualities may be better at avoiding the dangers others experience. Dr. Richard Lerner, director of the Institute for Applied Research in Youth Development at Tufts University, agrees that most teens do not have a stormy adolescence. In order to discover how teens navigate these years happily and successfully, Lerner and his colleagues have conducted a long-range study of teens and their parents. This research, the 4-H study of positive youth development, examines how young people interact with others. It pays close attention to the activities they are involved in, such as clubs, sports, and the arts. It also looks at the adults who guide and support these children. The study identifies 5 interconnected characteristics for positive development in adolescence, called the 5 C's: competence, confidence, connection, character, and caring. Researchers suggest that young people who have the 5 C's will also demonstrate a 6th C: contribution to self, family, community, and society. Teens with the 5 C's are more likely to become capable adults, and theoretically young people without the 5 C's would be at higher risk for a variety of social and personal problems. How does Eliza fare in terms of these characteristics? She has social and academic skills which allow her to excel in school, competence. Perhaps because of her talents, she has a good feeling about herself and her abilities, confidence. She has positive bonds with family, friends, and people at school, connection, and a good sense of right and wrong, character. And finally, Eliza cares about other people, caring. Her qualities and experience reflect all 5 C's. At least in Eliza's case, having the 5 C's accurately predicts her success. But could it be that kids like Eliza are happier because they have fewer problems than others? That doesn't seem to be true. The 4-H study has found that teens from any background can thrive. It doesn't matter if they are rich or poor, from the city or the country, living in a high-crime area or a low-crime area. Anyone can do well with a little help. Researchers say that even adolescents with very serious problems can be successful if they are resilient. This means that even when they get knocked down by life, they can bounce back and recover quickly from the negative experience. So, how do teens develop the 5 C's and become more resilient? Lerner's study found that families, schools, and communities are key. Quality time spent with teachers, parents, mentors, or in effective out-of-school programs put young people on a positive path to community contributions, he says. According to Lerner, teens need opportunities that nurture positive interactions with adults, develop life skills, skills that will help them deal with the challenges of everyday life, and give them the chance to show leadership. For parents, contact is critical. Although teens are starting to pull away, parents need to stay connected. One way is to participate in out-of-school activities. For example, kids and parents could volunteer to take care of a park or build a playground. But parents don't have to work on long-term projects to have an effect. Just spending time with teens can help. For example, one of the strongest predictors of positive youth development was that a family ate dinner together on a regular basis. It is also important for parents to give teens time and space to explore their own interests and passions. All these recommendations are consistent with the advice of psychologist Lawrence Steinberg of Temple University. According to Steinberg, author of the 10 Basic Principles of Good Parenting, parents should be involved in their children's lives and give them plenty of love. In his book, Steinberg says that good parenting encourages elements like honesty, empathy, self-reliance, kindness, cooperation, self-control, and cheerfulness. Sounds a lot like the 5 C's. Steinberg recognizes that for some people, good parenting is innate, but all parents can improve their skills through practice. The message for parents is a good one. Your teenagers will not necessarily suffer, and neither will you. Their connections to both friends and family will help them succeed during this period. But letting them have the one thing they really want, some independence, may actually help by giving them a sense of competence and control. During these years, parents need to find a balance between staying connected and letting go. This may be the best rule a parent can
Unit
make.
3. Reading 2. Page 66.
Bird by bird. Every morning, no matter how late he'd been up, my father rose at 5:30, went to his study, wrote for a couple of hours, made us all breakfast, read the paper with my mother, and then went back to work for the rest of the morning. Many years passed before I realized that he did this by choice, for a living, and that he was not unemployed or mentally ill. I wanted him to have a regular job, where he put on a necktie and went off somewhere with the other fathers and sat in a little office. But the idea of spending entire days in someone else's office doing someone else's work did not suit my father's soul. I think it would have killed him. He did end up dying rather early, in his mid-50s, but at least he had lived on his own terms. So I grew up around this man who sat at his desk in the study all day and wrote books and articles about the places and people he had seen and known. He read a lot of poetry. Sometimes he traveled. He could go any place he wanted with a sense of purpose. One of the gifts of being a writer is that it gives you an excuse to do things, to go places and explore. Another is that writing motivates you to look closely at life as it lurches by and tramps around. Writing taught my father to pay attention. My father, in turn, taught other people to pay attention and then to write down their thoughts and observations. His students were the prisoners at San Quentin, who took part in the creative writing program. But he taught me, too, mostly by example. He taught the prisoners and me to put a little bit down on paper every day and to read all the great books and plays we could get our hands on. He taught us to read poetry. He taught us to be bold and original and to let ourselves make mistakes. But while he helped the prisoners and me to discover that we had a lot of feelings and observations and memories and dreams and opinions we wanted to share, we all ended up just the tiniest bit resentful when we found the one fly in the ointment, that at some point we had to actually sit down and write. I believe writing was easier for me than for the prisoners because I was still a child, but I always found it hard. I started writing when I was 7 or 8. I was very shy and strange-looking. Loved reading above everything else, weighed about 40 pounds at the time, and was so tense that I walked around with my shoulders up to my ears like Richard Nixon. I saw a home movie once of a birthday party I went to in the 1st grade, with all these cute little boys and girls playing together like puppies, and all of a sudden I scuttled across the screen like Prufrock's crab. I was very clearly the one who was going to grow up to keep dozens and dozens of cats. Instead, I got funny. I got funny because boys, older boys I didn't even know, would ride by on their bicycles and taunt me about my weird looks. I think this is why I walked like Nixon. I think I was trying to plug my ears with my shoulders, but they wouldn't quite reach. So first I got funny, and then I started to write. Although I did not always write funny things. I started writing a lot in high school. Journals, impassioned anti-war pieces, parodies of the writers I loved. And I began to notice something important. The other kids always wanted me to tell them stories of what had happened, even, or especially, when they had been there. Parties that got away from us, blow-ups in the classroom or on the schoolyard, scenes involving their parents that we had witnessed. I could make the story happen. I could make it vivid and funny, and even exaggerate some of it so that the event became almost mythical, and the people involved seemed larger, and there was a sense of larger significance, of meaning. I'm sure my father was the person on whom his friends relied to tell their stories, in school and college. I know for sure that he was, later, in the town where he was raising his children. He could take major events or small episodes from daily life and shade or exaggerate things in such a way as to capture their shape and substance, capture what life felt like in the society in which he and his friends lived and worked. People looked to him to put into words what was going on. I suspect that he was a child who thought differently than his peers, who may have had serious conversations with grown-ups, who, as a young person like me, accepted being alone quite a lot. I think that this sort of person often becomes either a writer or a career criminal. Throughout my childhood, I believed that what I thought about was different from what other kids thought about. It was not necessarily more profound, but there was a struggle going on inside me to find some sort of creative or spiritual or aesthetic way of seeing the world and organizing it in my head. I read more than other kids. I luxuriated in books. Books were my refuge. I sat in corners with my little finger hooked over my bottom lip, reading, in a trance, lost in the places and time to which books took me. And there was a moment, during my junior year in high school, when I began to believe that I could do what other writers were doing. I came to believe that I might be able to put a pencil in my hand and make something special happen. Then I wrote some terrible, terrible stories.
Unit 4. Health. The Q Classroom. Page 81.
Today we'll discuss the Unit 4 question, how does the environment affect our health? For example, how about the air? Does polluted air affect our health? Sophie.
Of course it does. Living in a polluted city can damage a person's lungs. Some people get serious illnesses that make it hard for them to breathe.
Yes, you're right. Respiratory problems are a good example. Una, what other effects does bad air have? Does it affect our habits?
Yes, you can't exercise in polluted air, and people need to exercise.
Good point. How else does the environment affect our health? Felix?
Well, polluted water has a lot of effects on our health. Polluted water is full of toxins. Fish eat the toxins, and we eat the fish. That makes us sick. Or the pollution kills the fish, and that means people have less to eat. Also, when people drink polluted water, they can get really sick. Some bad diseases are spread through polluted water.
Okay. It's clear that the environment has a lot of effects on our health. Marcus, did we miss anything? How else does the environment affect our health?
I think the toxins we put into the air and water might cause all kinds of illnesses, like cancer. And some effects can be indirect. For example, we are exposed to more UV rays because of all the chemicals we put in the air. That raises our risk for skin cancer.
That's right. The problem with polluting the environment is that everything is connected. You can't really predict all the effects.
Unit 4. Reading 1. Page 84.
Can climate change make us sicker? Climate change is constantly on the news these days. You can't avoid it. We hear about how it will affect the geography of the planet. Heavier rains will cause coasts to flood in some areas, while drought conditions will create deserts in others. We have also been told about energy concerns, how warmer weather caused by global warming will require the use of more air conditioning, which will harm the Earth's atmosphere. These global weather changes will even affect our transportation systems. More intense storms will disrupt air travel and flood roads, railways, and transportation systems. The media love to report on the topic of planetary weather changes caused by global warming. Many TV programs and documentary films are made about it every year, and it seems that every week a new book is published about climate change and the future of our planet. So we know that climate change can inconvenience us and even put our lives in immediate danger. But can change in the climate actually make us sicker? Dr. Edward Malbach, director of George Mason University's Center for Climate Change, thinks the answer is yes, and adds that this question has mostly been ignored by researchers and scientists until now. He has written that while the transportation, economic, and environmental implications of climate change have increasingly become a priority for the United States, the health implications have been largely neglected. Perhaps one reason for this neglect is the size of the problem. Because the issues are so big and complex, it can be difficult to follow the chain of cause and effect from start to finish. In other words, it's not always clear how weather can affect our physical health, especially in the long term. However, experts are slowly beginning to address the question, and international organizations are trying to raise awareness. In a recently released report, the Global Humanitarian Forum estimates that around 300,000 people die each year due to climate change. This number is larger than ever, and predictions are that it will only grow in the future. One estimate says that 20 years from now, as many as 500,000 people annually could lose their lives as a direct result of problems created by climate change. To understand what these problems might look like, let's look at two situations that have a direct impact on people's health. One predicted consequence of global warming is that sea levels will rise worldwide as polar ice caps melt at an accelerated rate. This salty seawater will infiltrate low-lying streams, rivers, and underground freshwater aquifers, the sources of drinking water for millions of people worldwide. Because many of these people live in poor communities, they will be unable to move to areas with safer drinking water. Drinking saltier water will have a negative impact on the health of people for generations to come. One group that will be dramatically affected by the extra salt intake is pregnant women. More salt will lead to higher blood pressure in some mothers and cause complications around delivery of babies. After birth, too much salt will cause serious health issues in babies that may affect their hearts. The change in global weather patterns is also having a direct impact on people's health right now. The painful and sometimes fatal dengue fever, or bone break fever, causes severe headaches as well as muscle and joint pain. Dengue fever is carried by a type of mosquito typically found in warmer areas. However, in the increasing temperatures caused by global warming, this mosquito is living longer and turning up in surprising places, including higher, traditionally cooler locations. As a result, these highland communities have seen their first outbreaks of dengue fever. Because the disease did not exist in the area before, the communities are not prepared to handle the medical emergency, which has health officials very concerned. The health problems brought on by climate change are not going to fix themselves, and they're certainly not going to go away. While some countries are only beginning to wake up to this issue, one country has started to act. In 2008, climate experts and health professionals in Ethiopia came together to plan for the future. They looked specifically at the question, how exactly do weather and climate affect health? They also considered what kind of climate change information healthcare workers needed to be able to do their job effectively and protect the population. That meeting has already resulted in action on one of Ethiopia's major problems, malaria. It is estimated that more than 50 million people in the country may be at risk of contracting the disease. In response to the situation, the Ethiopian government is now using the latest technology to gather statistics on rainfall, temperature, and humidity. This information is then used to map out areas of potential malaria outbreaks. This allows officials to prepare for a possible increase in malaria cases well before it occurs. Ethiopia is demonstrating that when health care and weather professionals work together in this way, time, money, and most importantly, lives can be saved. Of course, we need to deal with the causes of climate change in order to slow the climbing temperatures. But even if we manage to organize a global effort that begins to address these causes, we're already feeling the effects today, and they will only be worse tomorrow. As the efforts in Ethiopia demonstrate, money should be invested now to find ways to address the health impacts of the new, hotter climate. Global warming may be a certainty. Human suffering, however, does not need to be.
Unit 4, Reading 2, page 91.
Tips for a greener planet and a happier, healthier you. The news about climate change and the environment is overwhelming. The level of predicted change in the Earth's temperature, sea level, and air quality is so massive that it's hard to know what to do, or if anything we do could even have a positive impact on the situation. It would be very easy to give up and decide the situation is hopeless. Our actions may not feel very significant when we act alone. Only if many individuals make changes in their behavior collectively can the power of this change be readily seen and felt. Here, then, are some changes that we can all make to enrich our lives on a personal level and improve the health of the planet at the same time. Your car. Suggestion: try the bus. Transportation counts for more than 30% of the United States carbon dioxide emissions. It is also true that 88% of all trips in the U.S. are made by car. It makes sense, therefore, that if more Americans leave their cars at home, there will be much less pollution and better air quality. This would help all of us, especially those with respiratory illnesses, to breathe more easily. Also, with fewer vehicles on the road, the incidence of gridlock would decrease and overall traffic would flow more smoothly. Even if people drive less, they still need to get from point A to point B. That's where the Bus Rapid Transit, BRT, comes in. The BRT is a bus system that provides faster, more efficient service than an ordinary bus line. It features longer buses that run in specially marked highway lanes where cars are prohibited. Unlike a subway system, which requires a concentrated urban population to make it profitable, a BRT works best in less densely populated suburban areas. By taking a BRT, commuters can avoid stressful traffic jams and angry drivers, which will result in lower blood pressure and a smoother, calmer ride for everyone. Suggestion: work closer to home. Currently, some organizations are examining how they can move employees to locations that don't require such long commutes. In a recent study of fire departments in Seattle, Washington, it was found that only 4% of the firefighters worked at the fire station that was closest to their home. Some of them commuted as many as 145 miles, 230 kilometers, each way to get to work. These firefighters were more tired and less focused at work. For companies and organizations that have multiple locations in a single area, it makes more sense to place workers near their homes so that they travel less. This has advantages for everyone involved. With a shorter distance to commute each day, workers can sleep longer in the morning and have more time at night to spend with their families. Being more rested and having strong family ties are two qualities of a more satisfied and more productive worker, which is good for any company. And by sitting in gridlock less, employees will be doing their part to reduce air pollution. In short, employers, employees, and the planet will all benefit from this one small change. Your home. Suggestion: downsize. In the United States, supersized homes have become the norm. Although the typical U.S. household has shrunk from 3.4 to 2.6 inhabitants since 1950, during the same time period, the average new single-family home has increased in size from 1,000 to 2,500 square feet, 90 to 230 square meters. It's no surprise that these larger dwellings are not good for the planet. They require more energy to heat in the winter and cool in the summer, and more materials are used to build them in the first place. Besides costing more money, both these things use more of the Earth's precious resources. In addition to the aforementioned savings on energy and materials, having less space in a smaller home forces you to dispose of things and simplify your life. Studies show that the percentage of people who describe themselves as very happy peaked in the 1950s. Even though Americans consume twice as many goods today, they don't say that they are any more contented. In fact, one study showed that nearly 86% of Americans who voluntarily reduced their consumption felt happier afterwards. Therefore, by shopping and buying less, not only will you save money and have a less cluttered home, you'll also feel better overall. Suggestion: make a move to the big city. Unless you already live in a big urban area, you may not think of a city as a green place to live. After all, big cities have more people, more cars, and more noise. And yet cities like New York also offer opportunities to live a greener lifestyle. Many New York City residents live together in high-rise apartment buildings, which are easier to heat and cool than separate single-family homes. In addition, many don't own cars, so they walk more. And in order to match the speed of the city, they walk faster. According to a recent report from the New York City Department of Health, one of the reasons New Yorkers are living longer than ever before is due to this frequent, fast-paced walking. The high population density of a city also means that people are living in close proximity to one another. When you're packed together with your neighbors, it's easier to find a community of friends who share the same interests as you. If you feel connected to others and don't feel all alone in the big city, your health improves too. So even if you are sometimes annoyed by your noisy neighbors, you can be happy that you are helping the planet by sharing space.
Unit 5, Art Today, The Q Classroom, page 105.
The Unit 5 question is, how important is art? What do you think, Marcus?
I'm not that interested in art myself. I like to listen to music, and of course I like it when there are nice pictures on the walls or whatever, but I don't go to art museums or galleries. Art seems more like a luxury to me than an actual necessity. It's something we enjoy, not something we need.
What do you think, Sophie? How important is art?
Oh, I'm afraid I completely disagree with Marcus. I think art is everywhere. In advertisements, in the clothes we wear, in the way people decorate their homes, in the things we write. I would say that making and appreciating art is a very important part of being a human being.
Okay. You know, we've heard two opposite viewpoints. Art is a luxury and art is essential. What do you think?
I think art is important. It's a way we express our culture.
That's a good point. What do you think, Felix?
I agree with Una. But we don't just express our culture through art. We also express our feelings and our personality. For me, music is a very important form of art in my life. I express myself through music. Other people express themselves through other art forms.
That's right. It's human nature. Not just to express ourselves through art, but also to appreciate art.
5. Reading 1, page 109.
Craft or Inspiration? Two Styles of Songwriting by Janice Ian. There are two basic schools of songwriting nowadays, one based on craft and the other based on instinct. Craft writers are people who essentially write from 9 to 5 every day, 5 days a week, whereas instinctive writers work only when they are inspired. Craft writers sometimes say that instinctive writers are just lucky, while instinctive writers may call craft writers assembly line machines. Each approach has its advantages and each has its problems. Craft writers. The discipline of writing for a set amount of time every day can reveal unsuspected talents. Creating so much material requires a writer to tackle a wide variety of subjects, which forces you to find new ways to say old things. And as Don Schlitz, one of the most successful songwriters ever to hit Nashville, points out, if you write every day and finish everything, then when a great piece of inspiration comes along, you'll be ready for it. In other words, staying with a difficult or boring piece of work might make you a better writer. You'll have more rhymes to call on and more ways to solve problems. On the other hand, over a period of years, the craft writer may burn out. Writing then becomes tedious, something to finish before you can go have fun. The original reasons for being a songwriter are lost. The songs themselves are written perfectly, but sound about as enjoyable as reading the alphabet aloud. You begin to repeat yourself or get lazy because you can get away with it. There are also times when writing can't be rushed. If you have patience, you may end up with a better song in the end. But craft writers sometimes depend on creating a large number of songs to make up for what's lacking in quality. If they're commercially successful and able to sell these songs, they can remain on the treadmill for years. They create their songs for everyone but themselves and flood the market with inferior material. In that sense, they can drag all songwriters down a level. And again, the fun can go out of it. Instinctive writers. For the instinctive writer, there's the thrill of never knowing what will happen next and just going where the music takes you. It's magical to write that way. All writers admit that they often don't know where it came from. When someone asked the 19th century French poet Charles Baudelaire where he got his inspiration, he replied, "Madame, I brush my teeth every morning." No, it's not a serious answer, but what else could he say? Quite often, your best lines and melodies will just pop into your head, and you don't understand how or why. Instinctive writing depends completely on that moment, so everything is a surprise. It takes the pressure off of deadlines and quantity. You count on sheer talent to provide the answers, and more often than not, instinctive writers are also the groundbreakers. With no rules to hold them back, they often find brand new ways of saying things. The problem is that instinctive writers usually don't bother paying any attention to craft. Essentially, they write blind. If they're fortunate enough to experience critical or commercial success, it becomes very frightening. Since there's no craft to back them up, they never know if the magic will be there when they need it. That stops them from doing anything involving a deadline, writing for films, television, or Broadway, co-writing on specific projects, like with an artist who's recording a CD in 2 weeks, or even rewriting their own songs. If you don't know how you got there in the first place, how can you improve on it? For instance, I was 14 when I had my first hit, a song called Society's Child. I'd written a total of 15 songs. Since I also sang and recorded the song, people identified me closely with the song itself. Audiences twice my age were hanging on my every word. Critics would ask me to explain a lyric from my album, and all I could do was smile mysteriously. 3 years after I wrote Society's Child, I left the music industry feeling like a cheat. It wasn't until I'd written other successful songs like Jessie and then Stars that I felt qualified to call myself a songwriter. Years later, discussing that period of my life with well-known acting teacher Stella Adler, I finally understood what had happened. Stella said, "Janice, you reached an age where talent was not enough." She was exactly right. Your talent and instinct can take you so far, but craft will see you through in the long run. Finding a balance. I personally believe that all art is a search for balance and an attempt to bring order out of chaos. To that end, I try and make use of both methods, writing with craft and instinct. I might undertake a specific project and enjoy the challenge of meeting a deadline, or I might let a song sit for months, even years, because some part of me says, you don't know how to handle
Unit
this yet.
5. Reading 2, page 115.
What does it take to be a successful artist? Why do some artists make it? Why do others fail? Is it possible that successful artists share certain character traits? They probably do. Although they may have different styles and interests, they have a lot in common, too. You can call it what you will: passion, drive, persistence. The amateur rarely has it. The professional artist generally does. It may emerge as fierce ambition or infinite patience. The true artist shows a willingness to work hard, no matter what. Time barely matters. Only the creative result is important. For example, when the artist Ralph Fasanella read about a mill workers' strike that happened in Lawrence, Massachusetts in 1912, he decided he had to go there himself to see the town. After arriving, he checked into a cheap hotel, spent the evenings in the local library, visited the museums, and examined the old mill machinery to understand the details. Eventually, he began to draw quick sketches. Before long, Fasanella was devoting 12 to 14 hours a day to his paintings, which depicted the strike and the lives of the mill workers. Ultimately, he spent 3 years in the community talking to people, drawing, and doing a series of paintings. He simply had to paint. Fasanella had never studied art, but his work stood out for its energy and detail. This single-minded purpose, this deep affection for art, turns up in the stories of most major artists. They can't be discouraged for any great length of time. They don't care if their art sells. They are rarely influenced by others' expectations because they follow their own instincts. Although Vincent van Gogh received no recognition during his lifetime, he continued to paint. Indeed, he was so passionate about his art that he painted at night, using candles on his hat. In all, he created 1,800 paintings in 10 years. Almost none of them sold. To the true artist, the task at hand is the only thing that matters. The extremely successful artist Leroy Neiman says, he started life in poverty. I had no contacts at all, and I came from a broken home. Neiman never finished high school, yet he overcame all these problems. He kept trying and working at art constantly. As Anthony Jansen, curator of the Indianapolis Art Museum, points out, it requires very hard work to become an artist. The profession isn't for lazy people. This profound involvement shows up in many ways. Angelo Di Benedetto, a well-known sculptor, spent 20 uninterrupted hours working on one piece. Later, he even took it into his bedroom. I had to see it when I woke up, he says. Similarly, C.E. Church, an artist from the 1850s, whose oil paintings are on display at New York's Cooper Hewitt Museum, specialized in pictures of the Labrador icebergs. When he was painting, Church would row himself as close as possible to the icebergs so that he could make a realistic drawing of the falling ice. The passion of the painter is always there, regardless of the consequences. Cecile Johnson, an American watercolor painter, once set up her easel on a Paris street, but unknowingly chose an area forbidden to artists. She was soon confronted by a French police officer who made her pack up and leave. She didn't complain about this event. Like all artists, she had been deeply involved in her work, and annoyances are part of the profession. Johnson also recalls painting outdoors in temperatures so cold that the water in her brushes froze. She has painted ski scenes in 20-degree below zero weather. Many artists have refused to marry, or, after neglecting their families, suffered divorces. They have gone short of food and have even been physically hurt because of their devotion to their art. Lee Millman, a respected American artist, puts it this way: "My art is my life, and my life is my art. I can't separate the two." Millman has done experimental work with new materials. One such experiment hurt her so badly she had to have 2 operations on her hand. When the nerve damage was repaired, Millman again took chances with her lungs by spraying linen fabric with automotive paints and new kinds of varnish. Millman is a friendly person who is full of confidence. To be sure, most art experts put self-confidence on top of their list of desirable characteristics. The belief in your own ability will sustain you through periods when there are no sales or when recognition doesn't come. Ivan Karp, an art dealer in New York City, sees a line of newcomers all week long and can quickly spot any anxiety. Conversely, Karp dislikes self-importance. One young man, for instance, declared that he would someday be better than Picasso. Artists can be sure of themselves without making such exaggerated claims. All the top artists have a certitude about them, explains one Manhattan critic. You can sense this certitude at once.